thanks very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully, everyone can see
Yeah, ma'am, we can.
and hear. Great, that's great. Thank you very much for this kind invitation and for hosting me, and congratulations on your anniversary. So I was asked today to think about the pleasure of teaching Shakespeare. So what I wanted to share with you was some work through examples of the kind of teaching that I do with my students based on my own research, which looks particularly at the conditions of indoor performance in which Shakespeare's plays were written and performed, and other playwrights from this period of time, the 17th century. So just gonna click through. So crucially, in the early modern period, one of the kind of main things that happened that I like to talk to my students about is the development of the theatre industry. So before the 16th and the early 16th century, groups of actors travelled around the country, and they performed in a variety of different spaces, found spaces. So they would go from town to town, and they would perform in churches, in halls, in outdoor space. One of the exciting things that happens in the 17th century is the development of the theatre industry and the building of permanent playhouses used for the regular performance of drama. And this is a map from Stephen Mullaney's book, The Place of the Stage, which shows us all the theatres that were used for plays in this time period. And in actual fact, there were 22 buildings used for either built specifically or adapted for the performance of plays in this time, which is a really significant shift in the performance of English drama. And for me as a scholar, one of the reasons why we have such brilliant playwrights from this time is the development of permanent structures for the performance of plays. And you'll see at the bottom of this image, you can see the Globe, the Rose Playhouse, the Hope. These are all outdoor amphitheatre venues used for productions. But today I wanted to talk to you about a group of playhouses which are sort of less researched in some ways. They're less associated with Shakespeare, but were equally important in this period. And these are indoor theatres, and there were 5 indoor theatres used for the performance of plays. And by indoor, I mean walls and fully roofed, entirely covered playhouses that were used for play production. And the crucial question for me as a scholar, and also for the students that I teach, and hopefully something that I can share with you today, and will get you interested in these questions, is what were the performance conditions in these indoor spaces? Why should we be interested in these indoor playhouses? Who the audiences were, who came to see plays in these types of theatre, and also who performed there, who were the actors that performed there. And I suppose the interesting thing about these questions is that this is sort of a fundamental form of theatre history methodology and performance methodology. As a scholar of Shakespearean theatre, I'm really interested in the question of where were things performed, what was performed, who performed them, and then the kind of crucial question is why. Why do these things matter? Why do the performance conditions matter? For me, really, this is the question between the content of the plays the way in which they're written, the characters, the scenery, etc., and how the conditions of performance affect that. That's really the kind of key question that I'm interested in. In terms of indoor playing companies of this time, we do have quite a bit of surviving information about who these companies were, and what they performed. So these are the indoor performance spaces used in Shakespeare's time and slightly beyond his time. And as you can see, we do have quite a lot of information. So we have a playhouse called the First Blackfriars, where a theatre company called the Chapel Children performed. Then there was another early playhouse called St. Paul's, which existed in the vicinity of St. Paul's Cathedral, and the Paul's Children performed there. I'm going to talk in a few minutes about what I mean by children's playing companies. The crucial playhouse that I've put in green here that many people are interested in is the second Blackfriars, also known as Shakespeare's Blackfriars, a group of boys actors, the children of the Queen's Revels, performed here. And then from 1609, Shakespeare's Theatre Company, who were the King's Men, used the Blackfriars, this indoor theatre, in the wintertime alongside the Globe, their outdoor playhouse. They went between the Globe and the Blackfriars from 1609. And at the end of my talk, I'm going to come back to the plays that I think were written by Shakespeare, really with this indoor playhouse in mind. We also have another playhouse called the Whitefriars, and the Phoenix and Salisbury Court later in the period as well. So just to say a little bit about what I mean by children's companies, we talk about Chapel Children, we talk about Paul's Children, we talk about children of the Queen's Revels. And this is a really important point that I convey to my students, that it is important to remember in Shakespeare's time period that the only people performing on stage were men. So there were no female actors, there were no women on stage. And that also, there were company of male actors, but there were also company of boy actors. And many of the plays that survived from this period were performed by children, what we today would see as children. And this tradition of performance comes from a very, very ancient tradition of boy choristers. So these were young boys that were trained to sing for the monarchy, and gradually during Shakespeare's lifetime began to not only sing religious songs and liturgy, but also began to perform plays. And this is where we get a tradition of indoor performance and indoor playhouses via the tradition of boy choristers. And crucially, the other tradition that emerges from indoor performance is that these playhouses were known as private. They were known as private playhouses, indoor playhouses. And the idea is that this quite crucial socio-economic term emerged from the practice of boy choristers privately practicing and rehearsing for performance in front of the Queen at court, and then allowing audiences in to watch that rehearsal for a fee. And the theory behind this is that these performances were therefore not public and commercial, and therefore not subject to government regulation. and were seen as private, i.e. that audiences were not coming to see a play that was being performed in front of everybody, but rather they were paying a fee to see a rehearsal of something that would eventually be performed for Elizabeth I. And there's really two schools of thought about this practice. Whether this was something that allowed elite people in Shakespeare's London access to exclusive courtly performance, or whether, and this was the case, that the same playwrights were writing plays for boy companies as well as adult companies, and that the term private, the idea of a kind of private performance and a private playhouse, was really simply a marketing exercise, that they were using this term private playhouse really just to entice audiences in, and that actually what was happening here was simply the same as what happened in public and commercial playhouses, outdoor playhouses such as Shakespeare's Globe. So this is a sort of two different schools of thought. On one hand, that the term private was camouflage for the theatre company managers who were making money out of the young boy choristers, or actually that there was some substance to the idea of private, that the income from private performances at a private theatre actually financed lavish productions for the Queen at court. And actually there was a kind of marketing value here that boy companies did present themselves as providers of theatrical court entertainment. And certainly we see in some of the plays performed by boy companies that there was a real sense of putting Elizabeth I at the center of these plays and offering plays as a gift to the Queen, and that she was figured in these plays as a very powerful spectator. Her patronage was very important to these theatre companies, as it was to Shakespeare. So there's two different kind of schools of thought here that is interesting to think about when we assess these plays. But I want to turn now to think a little bit about the performance conditions at these playhouses, and how they might have affected Shakespeare's writing. This is a key research question for scholars and students alike. What were the conditions of indoor performance, and how does that affect the plays that were written and performed at these theatres? The key thing to remember is that many of these indoor playhouses were constructed within existing buildings, and often these were existing buildings that had been medieval churches or medieval religious space. So I'm going to hone in now on Shakespeare's indoor theatre. So as I mentioned, the majority of Shakespeare's plays pre-1609 were written for outdoor theatre. So the Globe, pictured here to the south of the River Thames, was the main venue that Shakespeare used throughout his career. But from 1609, his theatre company gained access to an indoor playhouse known as the Blackfriars. And you can see here how close they were in distance. So just across the river, we have the Globe here circled, and then the Blackfriars. And as you can imagine, in terms of the British summer and the British winter, it was a great thing for Shakespeare's theatre company that from 1609, they used the Globe, which is an outdoor unroofed venue, in the summer, and in the winter when it was cold, they were able to move indoors to the Blackfriars and not have to use the Globe during the winter time, which was important in terms of the economic value of their company and their ability to put plays on year round. So should you ever be in London and wish to see where the Blackfriars stood, it's near Blackfriars tube station, train station, and the only thing that survives is the name Playhouse Yard is the only thing that survives now that gives us some indication that a theatre stood in the Blackfriars. So in terms of what this theatre looks like, the Blackfriars Theatre was constructed in what had been a refectory, which is a sort of large dining hall of a monastic area known as the Blackfriars. So there were Dominican friars who wore black, lived in this area of London, and the area came to be known as the Blackfriars. And the theatre, the Blackfriars, was constructed in a stone building, much like this surviving refectory in Chester. So the space that Shakespeare worked in was essentially a kind of a stone medieval exterior with stained glass windows. So a very medieval and Catholic aesthetic. And then situated within that was constructed a wooden playhouse that was really kind of up-to-date early modern architecture. There's very few surviving images of indoor playhouses, but this is one of them from the front of a play called The Wits, and it shows us an unknown indoor theatre. And what you can see here is a small thrust stage. Crucially, you'll notice here that indoor theatres, obviously in Shakespeare's time, we live in it's a time of no electric light, so everything was candle lit. So the lighting at indoor theatre was a mixture of candlelight and daylight. And also that audiences were seated all around the stage. So it was a really 360 way of performing. So this is kind of crucially the sort of breakdown of the physical conditions. So we have all audience members seated, which is different from the Globe, where at the Globe, we have some audience members that stood around the stage, and even at the modern reconstruction of the Globe, we still have audience members standing around the stage. They're known as the groundlings. And we also have 2 chandeliers of 8 candles. We have footlights here at the bottom as well. And we have a thrust stage where we have audience seated all around. And we have known what's known anachronistically as a discovery space, which is a curtained middle entrance where we have here a clown emerging from those curtains above as well. So what I like to remind my students is always that when we think about Shakespeare's plays and we think about actors performing them, they really are performing to an audience which are all around them. So they really do have to think about how they position and talk to different audience members that are surrounding them. Another kind of important piece of architectural evidence that we have are known as the Worcester College drawings. They're called the Worcester College drawings because they're held at Worcester College, Oxford, and they are drawn by John Webb, who was an architectural apprentice to the great Renaissance architect Inigo Jones. And these are his sketches of an unknown indoor theatre. So this is the exterior of the theatre, and what you can see here is the layout of the stage. And again, you can see there's a thrust stage with audience members seated all around that stage, and stage boxes either side of the stage. These are images. So in 2014, next door to London Shakespeare's Globe, they opened an indoor playhouse called the San Wanamaker Playhouse, and I'm a member of the architectural group that we did the research to construct this playhouse. And these are the early mock-ups of this playhouse and some of the work we did to think about how we construct this theatre, what evidence survives. And these are just some images of that actually being constructed. You can see here some of the main architects and theatre historians involved in that construction. And this is the computer images that were created at the time. And this is the final finished version, the San Wanamaker Playhouse. If you come to London, you can come and see performances there. It's a very, very beautiful playhouse, but it gives us an insight into what performance conditions, what it was like to be in Shakespeare's Blackfriars theatre. This is the beautiful ceiling that marks the top of the theatre in the San Wanamaker. There's another reconstructed playhouse. This is known as the Blackfriars Playhouse, and it's in Staunton, Virginia in America. Another attempt at a reconstruction of what Shakespeare's Blackfriars would have looked like. As you can see here, the candles, again, you can see a thrust stage with audiences seated all around. So just to finish up, I want to talk now about the acoustic environment and the visual environment here, and how they might have affected Shakespeare's writing. So crucially, the indoor environment meant that there weren't external noises like you had at the Globe of the sound of London all around, and also having to compete to sort of fill a large amphitheatre full of 3,000 people. And what this meant is the acoustic environment of the indoor Blackfriars was one which was a very live sound and very, very good for music. So what we see in indoor playhouse plays is more songs, more dances, more masks performed indoors, far more music running through these plays than in outdoor repertories. Visually, we also have candlelight, and the candlelight was really important to these plays in terms of creating a very particular aesthetic and look. So this is an account of a performance that talks about the place being resplendent and then the light shining like the day. There's lots of accounts that talk about flickering and glistening of light. So we know that this was a highly beautiful kind of glistening and glittering environment. Also, for the first time, unlike outdoor playhouses, amphitheatres, playwrights could control lighting. So they could think about how they shut down lighting, had fewer candles, or blacked out daylight windows. So certainly in some plays, you get a sense of darkness descending. And that's because of the conditions of indoor playhouse and the possibility, the technology actually of being able to control light for the first time. The other thing to note about these indoor playhouses is that because they were much smaller than outdoor venues like the Globe, fewer audience members meant that theatre companies paid charged a higher admission price. So the minimum admission for entry to the Blackfriars was 6 pennies. If you took your 6 pennies to the Globe, that would get you the best seat in the house. So we have at Shakespeare's Blackfriars a more socio-economically elite audience. And there's a sense that perhaps these plays were pitched at a more fashionable audience, a wealthier audience, trying to charm them, trying to perhaps appeal to them in terms of the level of education, the particular topics that were discussed. So crucially, just to finish my discussion and to really leave you with some questions and something to think about, is that the plays that we think about when we come to consider Shakespeare's indoor playhouses are the plays known as the romances. Sometimes they're known as the tragicomedies. Shakespeare's post-1609 plays, which are The Winter's Tale, Cymbeline, The Tempest, Henry VIII, and The Two Noble Kinsmen. And For me, I think these plays definitely show characteristics of a response to a very different performance environment in terms of an indoor performance environment. So as I mentioned, indoor, the acoustics are very different. There's more possibility and potential for music. And what we see running through these plays is a higher increase of music and song. So for those of you who know The Tempest, you'll note that music and song and singing run through that play in a way that is particularly dominant in Shakespeare's canon. So for me, I think Shakespeare is taking advantage of a different acoustic environment in terms of having more music in these plays. The other thing we have is a different visual language in these plays. There is far more focus on small detail, intimate detail. And again, I think that's to do with having a smaller theatre venue, one that is candle lit, one where the visual is suddenly foregrounded in a way that it isn't at large amphitheatres. So we might think in terms of these plays about in Cymbeline, the focus on the mole on Imogen's breast is quite an important point in that play. At the end of The Winter's Tale, we have this very visual moment of Hermione's statue coming to life, which really works very beautifully under candlelight in a smaller venue. And in The Tempest, we have lots of visual moments of spectacle. So we have Ariel appearing as a harpy, we have glistening and glittering clothes. That is specific in the text, that the clothes are supposed to glisten, which for me is a direct description of candlelight performance. The final more, and again, I think when we think about candlelight, we think about magic and we think about romance, and these plays are known as the romance plays, and they do have an element of magic and kind of ethereal aesthetic to them that does lend themselves to candlelight conditions that we had at indoor theatre. Finally, more subtly, as I mentioned earlier on, the Blackfriars was constructed in what was a medieval refectory monastic space, and a medieval and Catholic aesthetic. And these plays are particularly interested, I think, in ideas of Catholicism. Henry VIII tells the story of Henry's break from the Catholic Church. The Winter's Tale tells a story about redemption and rebirth, which has very strong Catholic tones. So again, there's a very subtle way in which Shakespeare is responding to these indoor performance conditions. So I think I'll leave it there. So hopefully I've given you a taster here of something that I share with my students, an aspect of my research, thinking about the conditions of indoor performance. Thank you very much. Hopefully I've stopped sharing screen.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your insightful theme address. May I now request the second theme speaker, Dr. Joseph Koipalli, sir, to enlighten us on the topic, Reading the Seeds of Time. For the next 25 to 30 minutes, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I need a confirmation. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for that wonderful lecture, Dr. Sara Dasagi. I enjoyed listening to you. I was going back to the days when I did my PhD research on The Tempest and the nuances. You know, for example, I always wondered why or how, when the harpy came, that beautiful magic can be created in the indoor stage with the candle lights. It was wonderful. The way you presented it, it came off very, vividly. I hope all the students, and even I too, personally, thank you for that. for that wonderful presentation. Professor Satish, the principal of the college, Professor Konur, who invited me, and all the members in the audience. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for your invitation. I would like to begin with I also would like to share my screen, if you permit me. I think, I don't know whether the screen sharing option is given to me. I hope it is. Can you see my screen? Okay, thank you. I don't know how you see it. That's the only problem that I have. Now, I'm looking at the digital turn in Shakespeare. Dr. Sara brought us through the days in which Shakespeare appeared to his own audience at his times. I would like to bring it to the attention of the young students here, how he appears to us, or to the new students, or the next gen, as we call them. Now, to give an outline, I would be looking at the new Shakespeares, the new media, the internet Shakespeare, Shakespeare sites and hypertext, the YouTube Shakespeare, social media Shakespeare, digital Shakespeare, and some things like that. I don't know how effective it would be after that wonderful presentation. Let's see, Shakespeare's time. We all often think of Shakespeare in terms of a book, especially the modern students of my generation. That's not modern, that's pretty past. Our generation actually looked at Shakespeare in terms of the book that you see there, the first folio. That was seen as something like a literary Bible. Even now it has a great value, one of the most prized books in the history of the world. But how it was composed is a very interesting thing. Let's go to I'm taking back you to the text history of Shakespeare. Shakespeare wrote on some pages. He circulated among his actors, and they memorized it. And somewhere the prompter's copy were there. Sometimes they had the copy of the company. Mostly, these were prized possessions. They did not want to give it up. So the printers used to send their people to the audience, among the audience, and there were stenographers among them who used to write fast the dialogues, and then they brought out what we call the bad quartos, as we know. So in one of the plays, Thomas Haywood speaks about it. The cradle aged thronged the seats, the boxes and the stage so much that some by stenography drew the plot and put it to print. And he bracketed, put scarce one word true. That's why we have the bad quartos. So in 1594, the bad quartos of Shakespeare appeared for the first time. And then we find the good quartos appearing. And finally, in 1523, we get the first folio of Shakespeare. Now, if you look at the editions of Shakespeare, this is the history that we have. In 1594, we have the quarto editions of Shakespeare appearing. From then onwards, many quarto editions came, and the folio editions came out in 1523, then 32, then 64, and 85. 4 different folio editions. Basically, these were only 2. 1523 and 32 look the same, and 1564 and 85 look the same. The latter ones were just the reprints. The latter ones added many more plays than what we expected Shakespeare to have, as we know today. Then it came after then the theaters, as you know, between those two dates, the longer dates, the theaters were defunct. And then we have the age of editors of Shakespeare, appearing, beginning with Nicholas Rowe in 1709, Alexander Pope. Many students come across him as a poet, but he was a great editor of Shakespeare. Louis Theobald, Hanmer, Warburton, Samuel Johnson. From here we have the famous critique of Shakespeare. And then George Stevens, Edward Capel. These were basically editors of Shakespeare. They brought out different editions during that about 80 years of period. And then we have what we, the variorum editions, came up with Isaac Reed. He brought out two variorum editions, the first two variorum editions, 1803 and 1813. And then James Boswell brings out the third variorum edition, 1821. And he was also, as you know, the biographer of Samuel Johnson. Then professional printing companies or academic printing companies came into the picture. We have the Cambridge Shakespeare from 1863 to 66, the New Cambridge series from 1984, the Globe Shakespeare, the Oxford Shakespeare, and the three Arden series editions of Shakespeare. Even now it continues, but now the rigor or the frequency with which Shakespeare scholarship or Shakespeare editions came out has come down. Significantly, it has come down. The Arden series, it is there, but then it is not the way it has been before the advent or the popularity of the internet. It doesn't mean that people were not looking at Shakespeare editions before. If you look at this screen, you will find Mrs. Smith bringing out an edition of Hamlet, where she is actually bringing out, I mean, she is comparing three different versions of Hamlet, the quarto 1, quarto 2, and folio 1, and then she is bringing out her own edition. You can see how the line number 48 becomes line number 118 in her edition. But that is her line number 120 in the quarto edition. Line number 67 is line number 149. In her edition, it is line number 147. And even there, you find the things are changing. Many things in between changes. And she gives those marks, for example, in bold, and in using these kind of different correct marks she uses, italics, and different kind of marks. She marks these changes, and here also she gives a variant of readings. And then she compares between the two. For example, here, stay here with us, go not to Wittenberg. Becomes, I pray thee, stay with us, go not to Wittenberg. Go, spelling goes different. I pray thee, stay with us, go not to Wittenberg. And here she adds an exclamation mark and so on. If you look minutely, many things get changed, exhumed all but Hamlet. Here it is a part of the line. Now here it is a different line. And so you will find serious scholarship has gone into the editing of Shakespeare and the comparing of texts. And this actually resulted in the variorum editions. Different editions of Shakespeare were being compared. As you can see here, the variorum editions of 1803 onwards, it started. This was a woman editing Shakespeare. So serious scholarship has gone into the making of Shakespeare's text right from the early days. Now, today we are at the digital turn. Ever since the internet came into the picture, the Shakespeare's books, the digital corpus has given way to his books, and the digital revolution in India since the 1990s has made a big impact. I was a young PhD scholar in 1990s in JNU. Well, and I downloaded the complete text, plain text version of Shakespeare from MIT library. And it took me 4 hours to download that text. And it needed 4 floppy diskettes, 1.44 diskettes. And it was a long story. But today it is a matter of seconds. You get, download the entire Shakespeare text in different formats, in the PDF format or the plain text format, different, with all those POS tagging and everything, you will get in a matter of seconds now. Now you also have the VHS tapes and film reels are given way to the 4 HD videos, or even better today. And the internet and its hypertext protocol has enriched Shakespeare's sites like anything. And the customary act scene line number has given way to the through line numbers, TLN, which is making internet surfing easier. Now, this is one of the sites, this was the site that I was referring to. That site remains as such even after some 30 years. Shakespeare.mit.edu. This is the simplest of Shakespeare sites that is available in on the net. All the major texts of Shakespeare are available there. They have also other resources. It's just that they have other resources. This is just one of the sites, and the oldest site that they had, one of the oldest sites they had. And it has helped many scholars like me to complete my PhD. Some of the Shakespeare sites, for example, here are these. These are very useful kind of sites. For example, if you go to this one, for example, to Before Shakespeare, you'll find that many authentic data is available, and they have been it has been there from 2016 onwards. And these are some of the sites that students actually miss. There are also podcast sites and Shakespeare blog, Blogging Shakespeare, Glamorous Voice. And No Sweat Shakespeare is an interesting site that is very good for students. They also have the podcast sites, podcast links are available. So you can, when you want to listen to Shakespeare, when you are not able to when you are not able to watch him, you can listen to him. There are many lectures available. Shakespeare Online, Shakespeare's Word, Shakespeare Standard, Shakespeare on the Ship. In fact, if you type the word Shakespeare on the net, this is the word which gets the maximum number of hits. He's just not the most famous English author. He is the most quoted author, and he is the author with the maximum presence on the internet. For 400 years, he has been there. Now, in the internet, also, he is dominating like anything. We go to the next one. Now, not only there, if you go to Shakespeare makes his presence on the Facebook, the Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and the graph you get there is, I will explain on the next slide. The Shakespeare Quarterly has brought out an edition on the digital Shakespeare as early as 2016. Now remember, this is one of the very conservative Shakespeare, the journals that we have, one of the most scholarly journals that we have. They were forced to come out with an edition on this, and later they came out with another one, #BARD, BARD. So the point, what I want to tell you is that Shakespeare has got a great, significant internet presence. And the way most of the students look for Shakespeare, just Google them, and you may not come to the right resource. You go to the the internet resources. For example, this one, Shakespeare Quarterly, they have a website of their own. You get all the major scholarly articles there. And nowadays it is mostly freely available, because thanks to the kind of library subscriptions that India is using. Now, on different formats, we find Shakespeare's presence very significant. If you can look at this on the social media, everywhere Shakespeare is there. To give you one example, if you go to the YouTube, you can look at for example, you can look at Shakespeare's plays, for example, or Shakespeare's pronunciation. You get the authentic Shakespeare pronunciation. In India we have, and even we have this problem of pronunciation, the standard accent. We don't know how the British Shakespeare pronounced. Now there are specialists who are presenting what Shakespeare sounded like, Shakespeare's original pronunciation. Not one, many scholars come out with and tell you the authentic Shakespeare pronunciation. And we also have brilliant Shakespeare lectures all over the internet. And the TED lecture on Shakespeare is a very interesting one. If you look at the first one, I would like you to go through this one, Christopher Gaze's lecture, and it will tell you how Shakespeare is a part of our everyday life. Actually, he's going there with a brilliant, catchword, we are quoting Shakespeare. He's going on for some 10 minutes. He's speaking phrases that we use, and he tells us we are quoting Shakespeare. The audience roars back, we are quoting Shakespeare. It's all Latin and Greek to me, we are quoting Shakespeare. And many expressions that to be or not to be, we are quoting Shakespeare. The many expressions which we use in our modern day English expressions, we quote Shakespeare. There's a video worth watching for anybody, even those who are not interested in a literary study of Shakespeare can go through that. And on the left hand of the screen, you have another version, the lectures on Shakespeare by major scholars like Marjorie Garber, and Anthony Pym. We have brilliant scholars giving whole courses on Shakespeare. The students these days, if they are not able to read Shakespeare, the kind of one of the things that most of us as teachers find it difficult is to make students read Shakespeare. Now, he can be heard from the podcast, he can be seen. Shakespeare actually was not meant to be read. This is a misnomer that we have. Different editions have crystallized Shakespeare into that logocentric format, text-based format. That's what we get now. But Shakespeare was never like that. Shakespeare was meant to be seen. Shakespeare was meant to be enjoyed. Shakespeare was meant to be spoken loud. He was all in your voice. How the brilliantly actors modulated their voice. That's how Shakespeare sounded. So to be or not to be, that's the question. That is not how it is to be spoken. It is spoken by a particular actor. You can see hundreds of versions of Hamlet on the internet, especially this particular most famous soliloquy from Shakespeare. You will find many people, many actors giving that on the internet for you. Here, you go through these sites. The importance of looking at what Shakespeare is, or the authentic Shakespeare. For example, on the left-hand side, you will find a Shakespeare.org. It's a drama company. But on the right-hand side, you will find Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, giving you Shakespeare.org.uk, which is a far more authentic site than the one on the left. I don't want to say the one on the left is bad, but text-wise, one on the right is far better because they're much more well-researched site. So what we can do is that we need to encourage the students, or the students can motivate themselves by going through the real, the important Shakespeare, the major Shakespeare sites to understand, have a better version of Shakespeare. This is one of the best sites that we have for the Shakespeare library sites, folger.edu, where you have all the text of Shakespeare. And this is the library which keeps the maximum number of the first folios. And first folio itself, as you know, has got many variant readings. That if you look at that Norton facsimile or the first folio, they will tell you there are different versions of the first folio itself. Although 1,000 copies were printed, they had variant readings even out of that 1,000 copies. They are not all uniform. So many copies are kept here. And if you have any doubt, just go through this particular text. This particular any student can go through this particular site, and they can see what Shakespeare looks like. Another one is this one, the Internet Shakespeare editions. And when I was a young student, I did not know what a folio looked like or what a quarto looked like. But now the students have this advantage of going through the facsimile editions of Shakespeare. If you click here, you will find, you will go through, they will take you to the facsimile of a play, by play or by book, the different facsimile editions, you will get it. And with all the plays, you will get it. And with all the line numberings, you can refer to these with the TLN. Here, I don't think here the TLN is available, but in the folder library, you have the TLN numbering. And here, for facsimile viewer, if you go to the Boston Public Library also, this is how it looks like. Page number this out of these numbers, and the division is Act 1.2. The TLN is 318 through 359 to 3. The play from All's Well That Ends Well. These were not available to the scholars sometime in the past. Nowadays, you have the data at your fingertips. So the students can very well make use of this. And this makes Shakespeare all the more interesting. And it's not just the past kind of studies that we are looking at Shakespeare anymore. For example, how many people would know, if you look at I'm just looking at Folger API tools, for example. Why is it Hamlet a famous, important character? Why is he better known? Very simple. The lines the words that he speaks is phenomenal. He speaks more than 11,000 lines, 11,613 words he speaks in the play. The next character speaks about 4,000. So he just dominates all the other characters. One of the shortest plays, this is the longest play of Shakespeare, and one of the shortest plays of Shakespeare, The Tempest. You look at Prospero dominating all others by speaking almost 4 times the number of the other characters. The next character is Caliban. And interestingly, the next character is Stefan, not the other characters. These are some of the wonderful insights that you get. I was looking at some of these female characters in Shakespeare. For example, in The Merchant of Venice, why we give importance to Portia? Because Portia dominates the other characters by about 100%. Shylock 2,881, but Portia speaks 4,600 characters or 600 words almost. So why a character, how a character gets foregrounded by Shakespeare is one of the way is how he gave the lines, how many words he gave to that particular character. But if you look at the way in which the Tempest, the final plays are arranged, you will find that he is even more subtle. Dr. Sara earlier told you how these plays become very important. The final plays are important. If you look at how the Shakespeare, by the time that he is writing those final plays, has become a master of the art. He just mastered the art. He could, we look like something like little babies before him. He can manipulate it like anything. Look at those lines in The Tempest. We do not know how profound thoughts do come to us with so simple, mostly monosyllabic or disyllabic words. And the earlier plays, in comparison to that, if you go to the earlier plays, you will find that Shakespeare is using very high-sounding expressions, bombastic, and then he is making our lives very difficult. But he is, as a novice, he was trying his art, but he was as if he was trying to impress us. But if you come to the final plays, it is very light. The entire play becomes very light. The way he organizes it is very light, and there are sites where you will get how all the players, how the characters are related to one another. They're using Venn diagrams, how they are related to one another. And if you look at the final plays, the Venn diagrams becomes much more simple, and all the characters become interconnected one way or the other in a very neat manner. Unlike in the earlier plays, where even to understand the Venn diagram, it becomes very complicated. Then what about the person who is reading the play? Now here, look at this. The modern students can do other kinds of research, or you can get further insights by just looking at this data. These are data which you can create. I was just looking at this particular one using this play, Hamlet, and I got this data out here. And you can also, by generating this data, a new research is possible. Now, can you believe that in a play like Romeo and Juliet, or Shakespeare is used by advertisements, and even before the advent of the internet, Shakespeare was used by advertisers. Now, how powerful Shakespeare's lines are used. For example, in this particular ad that you see here, you can find that how he is condensed, how I don't know whether you can see me. Can you see the screen? Somebody, can you respond?
Yes, sir.
Can you see the screen of YouTube being played?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you see this drama? Sorry, can you see this drama being enacted?
The YouTube link we can see.
Sorry?
YouTube link we can see, sir.
Not the YouTube link. I'm just showing you something else. So let me share this. Maybe I have to go through the sharing button. I have to change. I'll change that. Can you see this now?
Yes, sir.
A piece of drama, a stage, am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, here the Nextel is giving an ad. You can see Nextel, a mobile company earlier, they are giving an advertisement based on Romeo and Juliet. The entire play of Romeo and Juliet is condensed to less than 30 seconds. Just watch it. Look at the way in which the imaginatively the person brings out the ad, bringing the story of Romeo and Juliet to convey the idea that had Nextel, the mobile phone, been there with them in those times, this wouldn't have happened. They should have used it carefully. Such communication. And there is another ad which I don't want to show now on Levi jeans, where the lines are bottom and the queen is shown there. The queen, what her name is shown there, and with the bottom with the ass's head and all that. That's shown. If you just go through the, you can search in the Google by giving the keywords Levi, Levis, and on the and bottom, you can search for that and you will be able to get that. It's another beautiful play. Now, it's not only that. Now, Shakespeare ended, we know that in the Hamlet, we say, Polonius say, brevity is the soul of wit. And then he uses many, and he is the second most, he is given the second or third most number of words in Hamlet. And he is never brief. Shakespeare was never brief during his time. But the internet used, I mean, there in the modern day lovers communicate using short messages, SMS, mostly tweets, and the number of characters that you can use in a tweet is very limited. But you can see there are plays. There are the entire Romeo and Juliet is given as a is played over the net or the tweet using by different characters all over the world. They came together and they played the Romeo and Juliet. So, I mean, not only once, many times. And this is the site where they actually everything got printed out. The word, it will say an automatic typewriter was given, and on the Twitter, the entire thing was tweeted. The entire Shakespeare play was tweeted. This was done by different players, different young people, like you, college students living in different places. They coordinated and they decided to play Shakespeare on the Twitter. So these are different kinds of engagements that we have today. It is not just like the old way, the old ways in which we used to take Shakespeare as a boring text on the screen, also on the page. As I told you, he was never meant for the page. He was always meant for the stage. Now his world, the world is his stage, thanks to the internet. And wherever he is played differently. There is no monolithic Shakespeare today. The English people would like to say that this is the original Shakespeare. But that original Shakespeare has gone to the world. Once he has entered the world as a playwright, now people appropriate him in different ways. If you have any doubt, just look at the play, how the Indian version of the Comedy of Errors has come out. A beautiful Hindi film, Angur. I have not seen anybody playing the Comedy of Errors better than that. I watched many films, many movies on this, but nobody has screened the Comedy of Errors better than that. That's absolutely in the Indian conditions. You won't even think that it is a foreign play. Sanjeev Kumar was the lead actor in that. And even recently you can find these brilliant movies by our Vishal Bharadwaj. The way Shakespeare is localized is important. Thanks to the notion that Shakespeare belongs to the world. Wherever he has gone, the world has made him their own. And these are some of the other sites that you get. Some of the important sites that you get. The entire Oxford Shakespeare is available. And then I am using generally this particular app for my students. All the plays of Shakespeare are available, different kinds of combinations are available, search options are available. This becomes easier for my students to carry rather than the whole text. But I insist that the students read it. But if I ask them to read it, it becomes a problem. I ask them to perform it. And my students using this mobile screens in their hand, they used to perform Shakespeare in the class. Sometimes from different locations they play. We used to come together and then they used to perform Shakespeare. Earlier, the Sagir was telling about one a map of London, and here is an older map of London. And if you go to the internet, you will find that this is highly pixelized, and you can see the pits and everything that they were here earlier, and now this can be zoomed in and zoomed out. But unfortunately, because this is my PPT, I will not be able to do that. If you just go and find out the screen, this particular map from it is available on the internet. You'll find that this can be zoomed in, and you can find the locations, and you can have the whole picture of Shakespeare, the London, of the city of London, the walls of London, and where the theaters were placed, and the area where Shakespeare is marked. Shakespeare's areas were marked. Remember, this was a time before Shakespeare's time. Some of the organizational sites I would like to stop here. Some of the organization sites are available, reliable organization sites are available, and some of the academic sites are available. Only thing is that you have to go to the right site to understand what Shakespeare is like. And commercial sites are also available. Some of them you may have to pay, but most of them is not worth it. Most of the academic institutions are promoting Shakespeare in such a big way that most of the information available are free for the students. And there I would like to stop, and if you have some questions, we will come back. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for the opportunity.